Thank you for coming today. Unfortunately, we have to report on a very sad incident that occurred this morning in the city of Troy. My name is Lieutenant Ben Hancock with the Troy Police Department. Also here with me today is Lieutenant Keith Young from the Fire Department, who will speak shortly after me. And we also have in attendance Chief Pete Hullinger of the Troy Fire Department and Chief Josh Jones of the Troy Police Department. I'm going to just do the brief introduction here, and then Lieutenant Young is going to go over the basics of what happened, and then shortly after that, we will take any questions that you all may have. So shortly before 8 a.m. this morning, the Troy Police and Fire Department responded to a hyperbaric chamber explosion at a medical facility at 165 Kurtz in the city of Troy. Upon arrival, the first arriving units unfortunately discovered a 5-year-old boy deceased on the scene. And Lieutenant Young will go into some more specific details on the incident.
Good morning. My name is Lieutenant Young with the Troy Fire Department. Again, the details shortly before 8 a.m. this morning, Troy Fire and Police Department responded to a medical facility at 165 Kurtz Boulevard for a report of a hyperbaric chamber explosion with a child still inside the chamber. Upon arrival, it was determined the child inside was deceased, and the victim has been identified as a 5-year-old boy from Royal Oak. A hyperbaric chamber contains 100% oxygen, which is up to 5 times the amount of oxygen in a normal room. The presence of such a high amount of oxygen in a pressurized environment can make it extremely combustible. Our initial research shows that this is not a common incident, and the scene remains under active investigation. Social workers from the Oakland Community Health Network have made themselves available to work with emergency personnel who responded to the scene and medical staff at the facility. And at this time, we'll open up for questions.
Lieutenant, do you know whether or not this center was licensed or accredited to have a hyperbaric chamber operated?
Not at this time. That will come with the investigation.
Have you guys ever had to make any responses there before?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
How did this explosion happen?
Again, it's under investigation, so at this time, the investigation is all new right now, so.
Does it take a spark, or is it compression?
It's a compressed cylinder, and with the 100% oxygen, it runs the risk of having an explosion. Yes, with the oxygen.
Can you give us some context as to, was it in a particular room? Was the fire sent into a room, or did it spread throughout the facility?
The fire itself was contained, yes, to the room.
Was there anyone? Can you describe the situation? I mean, the visual of what was there. Is that in a separate room from where the operator would be?
Upon our initial investigation, the operator would be with the chamber, so the medical staff would be in there, but due to being pressurized.
Were there any other injuries in connection with this incident?
Do you want to speak on that, Ben?
I think the mother of the child also suffered some injuries to her arms as she was standing right next to the chamber when the explosion occurred.
Are you able to talk about why the child was in the chamber? Was he going through something medical?
No, we don't know exactly what the child was being treated for at the center today.
In addition to the child and the mom, how many other people were in the center at the time?
Just a few of the medical staff were also there with them.
In the explosion, was it contained inside the chamber?
That's correct. The explosion was contained to the chamber in the room itself that it was in.
Did this explosion happen very suddenly, or was there a call, I guess, was there an issue before this explosion happened that medical staff were trying to address before the explosion actually occurred?
With our initial investigation, nothing showing that. Our initial response was for the chamber explosion.
And did the staff give you any indication as to how long the child may have been inside the chamber before it exploded?
No, we don't have that information currently.
Would the mom have been aware of the child in distress, the situation?
Yes, the mother was aware of the distress.
I have to ask you a silly question. Who was responsible for, I guess, licensing this kind of facility, inspecting the equipment, inspecting a hyperbaric chamber? Is that something a municipality like, the fire department would handle, or is that a state thing? Or who does that kind of thing? Who oversees this kind of equipment in these kinds of centers?
Yeah, the city does not oversee that. It would be a state. And so with our investigation, there's going to be multiple jurisdictions and departments throughout the state that are going to be a part of this investigation. So that information will become available later at a time.
I'm trying to get gruesome, but do you extract a person after an explosion, or does this thing disintegrate?
The system being under the pressure that Lieutenant Young spoke about, you have to wait for that pressure to be released before you can extract the patient. So steps were taken to do that before the child was removed.
Based on what your agencies have seen this morning in the current investigation, is there cause for alarm right now for any other centers or sites or facilities that may be using hyperbaric chambers like this?
No, we've did some initial investigation. This is very uncommon, so we're not sure what led up to it, and that's what our investigation is going to show. So in further time, we'll be able to release that information, what exactly happened with that chamber.
Have you, or any of your agencies have seen a situation like this before?
Not myself. I've been with the department for 10 years, and we've never responded to anything like this.
These chambers, what exactly, I mean, I know they're in oxygen, they have oxygen, but what kind of patients, use these chambers, these hyperbaric chambers?
Unfortunately, we don't have a medical staff with us today, so they would be able to answer those questions. We just know that they can be used for all types of recovery.
Is there an autopsy scheduled for the child deceased in the
The investigation is extremely active right now. We still have units on scene, so we don't have that information available right now.
And how much longer do you think your units will be out at the site?
We're unsure currently.
Is the facility currently closed, or do they have other chamber rooms that are being used?
Everything's secure in that facility right now for our investigation, so it's currently closed.
And lieutenants, what does your investigation from each of your agencies involve? What are you looking to uncover or discover?
As far as our investigation goes with the fire department, we don't really have an investigation. We took our initial investigation for the fire and the explosion, but from that, everything's going to get turned over to the state.
I think most importantly, just the events leading up to it, and what caused this to happen. But like Lieutenant Young said, that'll be handled by some other agency other than the two of ours. Did you have a question?
Yes, I'm so sorry, I was lost in the center, so I came late, a few minutes late. I know that you already repeated the rundown, but could you please explain what happened? I missed all of that.
We'll have a copy of the press release that Lieutenant Young described that you can take with you.
Here,
Yep,
right now?
yep,
Okay,
yep.
perfect. And then I do have follow-up questions about these chambers. There's data that looks back 7 years at fires of medical facilities using this treatment, which begs the question, was this place following fire code in the use of its chamber, and were there inspections recently?
I don't have that information in front of me, but that's something that we can get at a later date.
Yeah, and then do you know what the protocols for patients bringing in objects that could spark a fire during treatment?
No, that would be a question for our medical staff, and they're not here with us this morning.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Just, you guys ever seen, dealt with anything like this? The first time I've heard it in 40 years.
I've been here just about as long as Lieutenant Young. I'm not aware of any incidents with these machines before. These guys are veterans, been here 25 years. We're not familiar with responding to one of these recently. Again, horrible, tragic incident that we don't want to ever respond to. And like Lieutenant Young said, we've got resources with the Oakland Community Health Network to assist our first responders and the family and medical staff that had to participate in this event today.
Can you talk about how your guys are holding up, given what they had to deal with this morning?
Yeah, well, the officers and firefighters are gonna, go through a debriefing, and we'll make all those available resources to them. As far as their active condition, I don't know to speak on that.
You said it was the mother, the child present, and then how many medical staff were in the building?
We don't have that initial number with us. It was such an active scene when we first arrived, but that's something we can also get to at a later date.
Forgive me for having to ask, and you guys to lead on your role if you want. What happens to a body in a chamber that explodes?
I don't think we need to speak on that. If you would like to do your own research on that, I think that's up to you. I wouldn't get too graphic on the incident today.
Thank you.
Lieutenant, you mentioned an active scene a few times. Can you describe what your team had to deal with walking into or arriving at that scene?
Yeah, initially it was a rescue, so our crews went in for attempt to rescue on the chamber, and then we also had active fire in the chamber, so we had to deal with that also.
Can you talk about, what you had to do to try to extract the child from the chamber?
So the chamber was already open upon our arrival, so we dealt with the fire aspect of it.
Were you able to extinguish the fire quickly?
Yeah, the fire was brought under control within minutes of our arrival.
Was it damage to the facility at all? I mean,
There-
extensive damage?
No, there's no extensive damage to the facility itself. A minor damage with the explosion in that room it was contained to.
You said that this facility will be closed until further notice?
That's correct, yeah. With the investigation going on, it will be closed until further notice.
We'll take last question here.
Did the child actually pass away, in that incident, or was he transported to the hospital? Were you able to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to elaborate with that on the time right now.